Hello, everybody. Good morning. I'm Mukesh Pareek, and today I am present with a very important prose writer from Romantic age, Charles Lamb. As we all know that in NET and GRF, uh, almost in every exam they ask us a question from Charles Lamb. If I remember, because as you all know that I have qualified NET for 14 times and 3 times GRF, and I'm a double M.Phil. I'm a scholar in the sense that in this, it is my motto to prepare myself as a teacher who can help students. Myself, I keep appearing in this exam, and my experience says that reading a writer on the surface level or preparing a writer by simply going to certain books of objective questions is not going to help us. So, to become more aware about a writer, we need to read almost a writer in depth. I am prepared today with not a very detailed lecture on Charles Lamb, but I bet like once you listen to this lecture carefully, at least twice, you will be able to solve many questions of Charles Lamb in the exam. Charles Lamb is a prose writer. That is an injustice of saying because he was a poet also, and he belonged to a poor family. But there had been a very drastic changes in his life, and because of that, he has written in a very subjective manner, and we find a kind of pathos in his writing. So I would be just talking about certain points from Charles Lamb's life and his works. And if you are ready with your pen and copies, then I think you would be able to write down certain facts. Friends, he was an essayist, a poet also, and an antiquarian. Now, this is something important which most of you don't know, that he called himself antiquarian. Antiquarian, Antiquarian. Antiquarian is someone who says, actually, there is a statement also, of Charles Lamb. Somewhere he has written that, I have not written for present, I have not written for past, I have written for antiquity. So this statement has already appeared in the exam, and we should be aware about this writer, that he has written about antique means past. So in his writing, he has always concerned himself with things of past. He was born in 1775, and he died in 1834. And as I told you that he's an essayist, so he has is best known for essays of Elia. Now, confusion of students that who is Elia. Actually, Elia is one of his friends who was working with him in the house where he was a kind of clerk. So Elia is not Charles Lamb. Elia was a friend, and he's also remembered for one children's book, Tales Mary Lamb contributed. So, friends, uh, Charles Lamb was a great, friend of Samuel Taylor Coleridge. He knew personally Robert Sade. William Wordsworth was his friend. William Hazlitt was his friend. So he was, very much in the circle of all the great romantics. And he was a center of all the major literary circle at that time. And in one of my videos a few days back, I was talking about E.V. Lucas. E.V. Lucas, who is famous for giving, thousands of definitions of romanticism. He was a biographer of Charles Lamb. So you should write his name, E.V. Lucas. He has defined Charles Lamb that he was the most lovable figure in English literature. Now, there comes a question that Charles Lamb created his father in one of his essays. So that can appear as a question, that Charles Lamb created a portrait of his father in his essay, Elia, which is actually Charles Lamb's father. In October 1782, Lamb was enrolled in Christ's Hospital. Dear friends, there was a charity school, Christ's Hospital, Lamb's house. So he was put in that boarding school. There can appear a question that who started this charity school. As you know, Thomas Gray on Eton College, and that aware about this charity school, that it was started by King Edward VI in 1553. So it means you can understand the kind of, and if you search, the details of the high level of that school, so you can understand the kind of, investment of English people, on their schools and on their universities. So, and Coleridge was also a student there. So you can understand, that a charity school can produce such luminaries, such great personalities in English literature. One more information I would like to share with you, that regarding Charles Lamb, that Charles Lamb suffered from a kind of stammer, a kind of stutter. He was unable to, speak fluently, and because of that, he was unable to, attend university education, which, fortunately, Coleridge and, his other friends were able to attend. Then he joined as an accountant, British East India Company. That question has already appeared in exam. That British East India Company, they had an office there in England. I'm sorry, London, and he joined that as an accountant. But before that, also he was doing some tidbits and bits. There, one of his very important friend of, a family friend of theirs, he contributed, in his education, and that father of his friend, he used to give him some financial assistance. But it is said that, once that uncle died, the financial conditions of this family, deteriorated, and Charles Lamb had to work. Now, let us come to that, Charles Lamb continued throughout his life for 25 years in this company, and then he was retired. We have a word in English for retirement, that is superannuation. So Charles Lamb worked there for 25 years, and he retired from there. And there is an essay on that. You should write it down, the superannuation. And this is the title of the essay also. Friends, I don't shy when I say that I first time read the word superannuation in Charles Lamb, and I came to know that, okay, this is the meaning of another meaning of retirement. So this is an important. One more thing which is mostly not clear to most of the students, that this is clear to most of the students, that Mary Lamb was a lunatic. Means she had to face fits of madness quite often. And it is also clear to some of my students that Mary Lamb killed in a fit, her mother. But most of you are not aware that Charles Lamb also suffered from mental illness, and he had to spare she killed her mother. But what I'm saying, that Charles Lamb was also suffering from mental illness, and he passed 6 months in mental asylum. So you should be aware about that also. You should write it down. And now let me come to, and that period you should be aware about. That was 1795. He was very much in the contact of Coleridge, Wordsworth, because you all know that in 1798 lyrical ballads published. So Charles Lamb, was admitted to mental asylum, mental asylum and lunatic house we call it, जिसको हिंदी में पागल खाना बोलते हैं. Lunatic asylum इसलिए बोलते हैं because lunatic means people who have something to do with with their mental state, and then asylum means to say a kind of haven. Haven means sharan sthali, तो वहां पे उनको रखा जाता है. Okay, now essays of Elia, let me come to it, were published twice. First edition was in 1823. That can be a question, and second was in 1833. And they were published in the London magazine also. And as I told you, that Elia being the pen name Lamb has used, and essays of Elia would be criticized. You can ever imagine that whatever a writer writes, or whatever we or you all do, there are some people who criticize us. So Charles Lamb was also criticized. His essays of Elia were criticized in Quarterly Review. That was a magazine, and Who criticized it? You will be surprised that Robert Sade, who was the poet laureate, and he was a friend, among the friend circle of Charles Lamb, but he criticized, and you will also be surprised that he criticized in the name of religion that the essays of Charles Lamb are irreligious. They have some irreligious material in them, and Lamb's first publication was the inclusion of four sonnets. You will be surprised that though we remember today Charles Lamb as a prose writer, but he was actually a poet. There came, a collection of Coleridge. The name of the collection was Poems on Various Subjects. It was published in 1796, and Charles Lamb published four sonnets. Today we don't remember these sonnets, and these sonnets are not, very much read because it is considered to be the kind of juvenilia. Those who are not aware about the word juvenilia should know that juvenilia means juvenile means a person of below 18 or 19 years of age. And we all know that, we students of literature, whenever we come across first time, with the beauty of English language and the poetry, we start writing ourselves sometimes. For example, when I started writing first time, English poetry, I started using thy and thou and thine, under the influence of Elizabethan writers. So it happens. So, but you cannot say that these poems of Charles Lamb were very, very famous. They were not famous by that time also, and they are not read today. Lamb's most famous poem I would be talking about in last lecture. I told you that Charles Lamb, though, is not famous today as a poet, but one poem is very famous, and its name is The Old Familiar Faces. I don't have that much time to read that poem in front of you, but I give it a task to you because I have already uploaded this poem on the blog of my site mukeshpareek.com and englishcosmos.org. You can go there and read that poem. And I'm sure that most of my students have already read this poem. So what is the name of the poem? The Old Familiar Faces. Like most of Lamb's poems, it is unabashedly sentimental. Friends, I would like to add here that this writer is famous for being sentimental. As you all know that in one of my lectures, which is already uploaded on YouTube, where I have talked about romanticism, the major points of romantic age. So when we talk about the major points of any age, it means those attributes or characteristics of that particular age are almost suitable to almost every writer, except four or three or four points, not suitable. So one point is very, very similar to almost all the romantic writers, and that is being sentimental, being very over emotional, being very, generating pathos, with his or her writing. So, but Charles Lamb's essays are famous. His poems, he has also written a romance. They are famous for being, sentimental. So, this poem, what I was talking about, The Old Familiar Faces, is very, very sentimental, and perhaps of this reason, it is still remembered and widely read, and it can be found in almost all the anthologies. Lamb began to work on prose and wrote a novella, write down its name, Rosamund Grey, Rosamund, Rosamund Grey, Gray. It is a story of a girl whose character is thought to be based on Anne Simon. Because he was unmarried, you all know, and you may consider that, he could not marry, but yeah, he had one or two love affairs in his life, and this novel is famous, where he's talking about that love. Anne Simon, an early love interest of Lamb. It is said that this romance was not famous because, as I told you, there was another poem also of. I'm not going to talk about that poem right now. I'm talking about Rosamund Grey, and I'm talking about why this romance is not read today, because it is loose in plot, and you all know that a novel is famous or is easily remembered, when there is a plot line. So this novel does not have that. But the most important and sweetest part of this novel is that here the writer talks about nature, for which romantic age is famous. Uh, then let us talk about the other collection which is famous, uh, Shakespeare's work, both brother and sister collected. Most of you are not aware that William Godwin was about to create a juvenile library for his children, and then this Charles Lamb and Mary Lamb, they took this task in their hand because they were family friends, and that we would write a collection taking the stories they have taken from all the tragedies and comedies of Shakespeare, and you will be pleasantly surprised that tragedies were converted into simple stories by Charles Lamb, and Mary Lamb, took in her hand the comedies. But when I will be reading out, the list of those plays, you will be surprised that the first entry in that collection is stories of tales from Shakespeare, the book I'm talking about. The first is the Tempest, and you all know that Tempest is not comedy, but those who have read Tempest know that there are many episodes which create laughter. So that's why Mary Lamb was responsible for creating stories from the comedies of Shakespeare. There are 20 stories as such, and I'll be reading out, and I'll be also telling you in few moments like who wrote what. And now I would like to come on some important essays written by Charles Lamb. Uh, you all know that uh, in Restoration period, many writers wrote about uh, different kind of comedy of manners. It is considered that by that time, Restoration comedy was satirized. Most of the critics satirized that, but it is Charles Lamb who uh, who actually was in the favor of Restoration comedies. Yeah, this point is important as such because you can remember this point. They can ask you this question, and now let me talk about one another important essay on the tragedies of Shakespeare considered with reference to their fitness for stage representation. This is the name of the essay. I repeat, on the tragedies of Shakespeare considered with reference to their fitness for stage representation. It was published, first of all, in a magazine. Its name was Reflector in 1811, and with the title On Garrick. Students, you should be aware about uh, 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 Garrick was, Garric was an actor, and they have already asked this question in net. And acting, Garrick and acting. This is the new title of the essay, the same essay on Shakespearean tragedies, on Garrick and acting and the plays of Shakespeare, considered with reference to their fitness for stage representation. So, what is the need for me to talk in short video about this writer and about particularly this essay? Because friends, it is considered that it was Charles Lamb who said that Shakespeare should not be played on stage, instead Shakespeare be read. I don't know how many of you will agree with me, but I 100% agree with Charles Lamb, because what was the tension behind, what was his worry behind writing this statement that Shakespeare's dramas should not be staged, should not be performed, but actually they should be read in silently in their rooms, in someone's rooms. Because writer sees that the commercialization, when somebody takes the plays of Shakespeare and perform them for some commercial purposes, then they can distort, can have certain distortions, some changes in the plot line, and then the spirit of the play can be harmed. So that can be the reason. And apart from that, I would also like to read in 1808, Lamb compiled a collection of extracts from old dramatists. This is also a very important book, Specimens of the English Dramatic Poets Who Lived About the Time of Shakespeare. This has already appeared as a question in net. I reread it. Specimens of the English dramatic poets who lived about the time of Shakespeare. It means here he is not talking about Shakespeare, but talking about all the other major dramatists of the same age, like Beaumont, Fletcher, Ben Jonson, and all the other writers. This contained critical characters of the old writers, which added to the flow of significant literary criticism, primarily of Shakespeare and his contemporaries. Um, Now I would inspired Charles Lamb for the kind of prose he has. Friends, whenever I teach in my classroom any essay of Charles Lamb, I teach so many different essays from different classes, and I have seen that the sentences are always longer with different clauses and pauses and sign of punctuation signs, and he doesn't write in small sentences, so you should be aware about that. And he keeps giving anecdotes and examples from his life, and then somewhere he becomes subjective, then he becomes objective, then he becomes philosophical. So that way it is a very good experience when we read Shakespeare, Charles Lamb's essays. We see that sometimes we participate in the activity he shows. For example, all of you are aware about Chimney Sweepers, that essay, and you see that by simply talking about the anecdotes or his personal experiences, whatever he has heard, whatever he has read, or whatever personally he has experienced about chimney sweepers in London of his age, we come to know that through those examples he's very philosophically giving us a message that we should be compassionate towards the poor and the needy. So he was influenced by certain writers. That is the major purpose of talking regarding this thing, and that is he was influenced by Robert Burton. Robert Burton, you all are aware, was a great writer of England. Some Sir Thomas Browne, that was another important writer, and he was also inspired by Thomas De Quincey, which was contemporary of Shakespeare. This Robert Burton was not contemporary; he was an Elizabethan writer. Not Elizabethan, actually, he was a 17th century writer, and Sir Thomas Browne was also a 17th century writer. And now it is also said that he's not talking directly. As I told you that in his prose style, he does not write simple sentences, he writes complex and compound sentences. So in these complex and compound sentences, we come to know that he has byways in between, that he digresses a lot. And this digression makes him an original writer in the sense. One more thing I would like to add, in this lecture, that as I just told you that he was blamed by Robert Sade in the criticism of his essay that he's atheistic, or say beyond, he's going beyond Christianity and immoral. But actually it was not the case. Charles Lamb was a very religious person, and he said in personal life that he said that Bible, especially the New Testament of Bible, is, I think, the best book. He says that the New Testament is the best book in the world, and best guide. New Testament is the best guide. That is his statement, I remember. And he used to, whenever he was in tension in his life, he used to read the Psalms, Psalms. Psalms matlab bhajan from Bible. Now I have given myself a task to read for you the list of all the works from the collection Tales from Shakespeare. They have included both brothers and sisters, The Tempest, The Midsummer's Night Dream. Now you can understand, as I already told you, that comedies were created into tales by Mary Lamb. So Tempest was from Mary Lamb, A Midsummer's Night Dream was from Mary Lamb, The Winter's Tale, as you know, it's a tragedy, so it was also a comedy, Mary Lamb, and As You Like It is a comedy from Mary Lamb. Two Gentlemen of Verona is a kind of comedy, Mary Lamb. Merchant of Venice, all know that it's a tragicomedy, but comic element is present, Mary Lamb. Cymbeline, very, very important a play where there are certain comic scenes from Mary Lamb. King Lear, Charles Lamb. So they suppose they ask you a question by giving you four options, like out of these four, which was translated by. So you should be aware about that. Later tragic comedy, but Shakespeare never knew that. Whatever he was writing, because for him it was either tragedy or history or comedy. He was not aware that he was writing, because for him everything was creatively created. So if he's writing, say Henry VIII also, tagged them, titled them, whether they are tragedies or comedies. So King Lear by Charles Lamb, Macbeth by Charles Lamb, All's Well That Ends Well, as a comic element is present, so Mary Lamb. Taming of the Shrew, mostly comedy, so Mary Lamb. The Comedy of Errors, Mary Lamb. Measure for Measure, Mary Lamb. And then Timon of Athens, it's a tragedy, so Charles Lamb. Romeo and Juliet, Charles Lamb. Hamlet, Prince of Denmark, Charles Lamb. Othello, Charles Lamb. And Pericles, the Prince of Troy, is by Mary Lamb. Now I would love to talk about certain essays of this writer. As I told you that Charles Lamb published essays of Elia, that is his major contribution, and some of his essays are very, very famous. I cannot talk to you directly, but everybody in University of India, sometimes in school also, and in the graduation and post-graduation, we read some essays. For example, South Sea House is a famous essay. That is the first essay of the collection. Oxford in the Vacation. This is a famous essay. Oxford in the Vacation is written from a subjective point of view, where the writer, when in vacation, that students are absent from the university, and he had pain that he could not attend the university education. So he's visiting, during vacation, and he's going in the classroom, in the library, in the kitchen, in the dining hall. Everywhere is feeling the air. So I would also like to talk about why these writers are called romantic, because they are always in either dream or say in their own personal prejudices writing, and they are creating certain situations which are not real. So sometimes some students should understand that his essays are quite different from the essays written by Francis Bacon, because Bacon is moralizing all the time, sermonizing, didactic, and writing altogether in a very short, pithy, aphoristic, terse lines, whereas Charles Lamb writes in longer sentences with different clauses, and but on one thing both the writers are similar, I think, that both are great followers of a Bible. Christ's Hospital, 5 and 30 years ago. That is the subtitle of this essay. They can ask you this as a question. Christ's Hospital. Christ's Hospital is a school, charity school. I told you in this beginning of this lecture. Two Races of Man. The Two Races of Man is another essay. New Year's Eve. Another important essay is All Fools Day. A Quakers Meeting. Friends, I would like to give you a homework. Those who are listening to me should write down the word Quaker. Quaker was a movement that has something to do with American literature, and this is very important, and I would like to talk about Quaker movement in one of my other videos. There is another essay which is very famous, that is Imperfect Sympathies. I teach this essay, Imperfect Sympathies, and I have ready with a quotation from the essay, Imperfect Sympathies. There he says, I am, in plainer words, a bundle of prejudices made up of likings and dislikings. This line is very famous, where he subjectively, that is why these writers are called, romantic writers, because he's at the outset of the essay, in the very beginning of the essay, he, confesses that I'm a bundle of prejudices. I have my own dislikings and likings. So Imperfect Sympathies is talking about Jews, is talking about the Scotland people, and another important essay is Macquarie End in Hertfordshire. Students, I have seen that we all read about Ted Hughes. Once in net exam they ask which area of England he's talking about in his poems. So sometimes when we read a writer, we are not aware about the particular area. Hertfordshire is the area where his ancestors used to live, and in this essay Macquarie End, Macquarie End in Hertfordshire, where he visited. Apart from that, Grace before meal is also a very famous essay. Grace before meal. I remember I read one part of this essay, in my schooling English chapter somewhere. When I, grew up, and during my post graduation somewhere, I read this essay. I came to know, oh, that essay was from this book. This essay. Grace means the poem. Sorry, the prayer. Christians, speak, before their lunch and dinner. So grace before meal. Apart from that, Dream Children, its subtitle is Reverie, is again a very famous essay. In this essay, he has created an imaginary wife and children. So this is also here he is also created. This essay is important. He has created about the character of his grandmother, and from that point of view, they can ask you this question: Dream Children or Reverie? Reverie means kind of daydreaming. Distant correspondence in the praise of chimney sweepers. Apart from that, there is a very famous essay. Its name is uh, Stage Illusions. Uh, Apart from that, uh, Popular Fallacies, Newspapers 35 years ago. There is an essay which is very famous, Some Sonnets of Sir Philip Sidney. If you get your hands on this essay somewhere, you should read it out, and for yourself. Child Angel, A Dream, and Popular Fallacies, I have already spoken. Uh, so these are some of the the most famous essays this writer has written. One another essay is also famous, Detached Thoughts on Books and Reading. Now I would like to read, at the end of this small video, certain more, two or three more important quotations. Nothing is to me more distasteful than that entire complacency and satisfaction which beam in the countenance of a newly married couple. Here is criticizing the newly married couple who this quotation is taken from a bachelor's complaint. Okay. One The essay I read, like, one who is Grace before meal is famous. There is a quotation from that essay. I hate a man who swallows it, that is his food, affecting not to know what he is eating. I suspect his taste in higher matters. So, as I was talking about, that he becomes philosophical at times, during his essays, you can understand that he says that if someone eats without tasting and gulp it down quickly, it means that person has no taste and he lacks taste. So it gives me food for thought, and can be discussed throughout the class. Apart from that, there is an essay, Witches and Other Night Fears. That is also a famous essay, Witches and Other Night Fears. There is a line from that: credulity is the man's weakness, but the children's strength. Now, it's a very famous line that children, if they credulously believe something, credulously mean to say faithfully. If they believe that, it's okay, it is their weakness, it is their strength. But if a man, grown up man, believes anything, it does not apply his mind, then it is his weakness. Uh, Apart from that, another quotation from Mrs. Battle's opinions on whist. There is an essay. I read a quotation: Man is a gaining animal. He must always be trying to get the better in something or other. Another quotation I would like to read from The Two Races of Man, as I earlier said. The human species, according to the best theory I can form of it, is composed of two distinct races: the men who borrow and the men who lend. So he has summarized that mankind is nothing but it's the game of giving and taking. Apart from that, they can ask you. I think I have covered almost everything, and but still one cannot be satisfied, while reading the outer covering of a writer's biography. Uh, uh, Yes, yeah, Harmeet is talking about, HarperCollins novel Mockingjay. Yeah, that is a famous one. It is, if you go to internet, you will find, that many writers foods for thought. And now, this is, I think, we should call it a day now. This is all about the basics of Charles Lamb. In my next video, I'll be talking about William Hazlitt. Those who are watching me first time, I would like to request them to kindly subscribe to my channel, and like all the videos and share. And those who are my students watching me right now, I request them to kindly share all the videos, so that in this typical time of corona quarantine and isolation period, I can reach to maximum number of students and help them out. And I can see there are many other students, from the last batch up here, and they are watching me. I'm so thankful to them. And I can just simply say that, if those who were not selected last time, they have a good chance now, and they should work very hard. And I'm always with you. And please write some comments, whether you feel it good or bad. That doesn't matter. I will never mind, because there is always a scope for improvement, I think. Thank you very much.